We call in now the energy and awareness of our beneficent Creator, Creator of all that is. We have been gifted with the very breath of life, with a conscience, with imagination, with free will, with compassion and love, and with an exuberant energy that can be applied in multitudes of ways. It is ours now to apply all this with our intention to co-create the best and brightest future possible. So how are you choosing to use your imagination? How are you going to imagine a future world for your children? What are your intentions? It's time. Now is it to make our own determinations, to set our intentions for ourselves, and in so doing, for all of the people on the planet. And so it is.
Thank you, Charlie. My name's Ron Vroman. I'm the old white man talking head for the Oregon Statewide Jural Assembly. I'd like to talk to you folks today about how did we get here? And the way I think it happened for our group is we started reading the founding documents somewhere along the line. Ray was doing this, and Charlie was doing this, and others were doing this way before I ever woke up. I didn't figure out what was going on enough to say I'd woken up until 2014. And others have known since they were teenagers. So when you're looking at these documents, each one of us carries away something from the document. Very few of us carry away everything. Some of us, like Richard, has huge portions of it in memory. And there are some way out on the bell curve that have the whole thing in memory, and they can go to any part of it and select out of it that exact phrase. I mean, it's incredible what these people know and can do. I am so far behind them. Yeah. But I only had one thing that I was interested in doing. When I started this with Cam and the others, and that was to return Oregon to a constitutional Republican form of government. That's what's going on. We're so close, it's you can reach out and touch it. And it starts when you say unalienable rights. And then you think, what is an unalienable right? And how many of them are there? And where did we get them? That's an all-day conversation all by itself. So once you figure out who you are and that you have unalienable rights, that you're a man or a woman, and there isn't anything else, and we have our children, and that's what they are. They are our children until they reach adulthood. Then they are their own self or person, as in first person singular of people. Anything else is a fiction. So a long time ago, these men made up a fiction and decided that they were going to govern themselves and go to war with the strongest king in the world. the King of England, and they were going to steal his property from him. Of course, they were going to write good paper, excellent paper, and they were going to fight a war, and they were going to sign treaties, and they were going to do all of these things necessary to provide us, the people, on the land and soil of the several states of the United States of America. The United States of America. And they did it. And they, along the way, invented the name for themselves and for all of us that came after. And that name is the United States of America. Anything else, if you see it with the lowercase t, or you see United States of America, or you see any other variation of that, it's not us. That's something else in fiction. Then those same men or similar went to the trouble to invent articles for their confederation and perpetual union. And they did that. In there, they wrote down how they were going to govern themselves and their confederation and all of the several states in the union harmoniously in perpetual union. Big job. So they went about that task. A lot of stuff happened. Some good, some bad. There were a lot of people at the table. There were bankers from the Khazarian Mafia, as Cliff High states, supposedly represented by Alexander Hamilton, the banker. Then there was a bunch of esquires or persons with the title of esquire, as in British Accreditation Registry of barristers and solicitors and attorneys and lawyers, and those persons educated in law, English common law, transferred to the Five Eyes countries and several other places. It's better than Napoleonic law. So we have ourselves named and we have a paper to govern ourselves. And it didn't work that well, so they needed to make some changes. And the change they made was called the Constitution. It was another clause in their Confederation and Perpetual Unions articles. That's all. And they made up a bunch of copies. I have not seen the receipt and the bill for the cost of the printing, and it could have been all done by hand. But there was a cost for it, and it was paid for, and they sent out the copies, and the copies came back, and the copies were all, except one, ratified, allegedly. I don't know if anybody's ever gone back to each one of the colonies and looked through the paperwork and counted up the vote, but probably happened because Rhode Island and the Providence plantation didn't bring it back in time to even go to Washington's inauguration, but they made it back before Vermont. So all of the several states were still together in a perpetual union, which is what is required to have the United States of America. Got to have that item. That item can come into existence when the representatives of all of the several states meet in Congress assembled. That's when that can happen again. In that Constitution, they said that the government service company from Washington, D.C., and forts, ports, and other needful buildings, and the territories of, that shall be known as the United States. And they are given the authority and the responsibility to fulfill the items and only the items listed in their document, which is our document. There is no other lawful document. Anything else is made up by somebody else and is not us. It's an imitation. It's a simulation of law. It's called color law. Play pretend. So, along the way in the play pretend, all of this stuff happened to us. And somehow, the Oregon Statewide Jural Assembly, itchy eye, started looking for a solution. Nobody else seemed to be looking for a solution. They were grooving on the problem. And they still are. Anna, Keith, the whole bunch of them. Jim, Destry, flock of Davids, Paul, all of them are not looking for the solution, or they have looked for the solution and decided it was not profitable to go there. So they would prefer to stay away from that and be able to milk the cash cow a little longer. I have no idea what kind of money they're bringing in, but at $6 a month times, I don't know, 100,000 members, that's pretty good income. Sure would pay our printing and postal bill. So here we are looking for a solution. And on Oregon, we said, how do you find a solution to this horrible thing? The book that holds the laws and the codes is 4 foot thick. You ever seen it? That's a big book. And that's not to govern people, that's to govern the United States. And they have flipped it around through their artful people in the so what's going on? We're searching for a solution. The solution we found was in the Bill of Rights. The first one we found was if something's not going right, then the thing you do is you make out a petition for redress of grievance. And as we are the sovereigns that are mentioned in the 10th Amendment, I believe it is, that says all other authority not mentioned here is reserved for the states and the citizens, or something like that. That's us. Otherwise, we're beneficiaries of this document. So we sent in petitions, and the petitions were not addressed. They were ignored. And we did a lot of work and effort in driving to Salem and all kinds of stuff, and they were still ignored. We got answers back, and they said yes. And I got an email from Dexter, and Dexter said, the information you're looking for does not exist. That's clear. And it was on letterhead, but it was not signed, and it wasn't mailed. It was an email. But I saved it. It's something. But what we're looking for doesn't exist in their documents, according to Legislative Council. So maybe you can believe it. I chose to believe that we were right, that Article 7 amended and original as now appears in the Oregon Constitution was put there unlawfully without a proper number of votes being counted in any one of the 36 counties November 8, 1910. Didn't happen. So, since that date, they have been governing Oregon, the 33rd several state, as some kind of color of law incorporated governance. I don't know how they did it legally or how it was authorized by the martial law of the United States that was in operation since March 1861 under various guises and various ways, but still not a constitutional Republican form of government coming out of DC. Should have been. The military industrial complex has been running for a long time, and I think it's the military bar banker complex. And I think that's been going for a really long time. So we did the petition and it didn't work. So then, still in Amendment 1, it says assemble. Well, okay, so we assembled. So then, once you start looking up all of this stuff, after you assemble, you need, what do you need? Oh, yeah, well, maybe we'd better figure out a way to get a grand jury, because everywhere you look, constitutionally, lawfully, it starts with the grand jury. It starts with a jury of our peers that are upset about something that had been brought to them or they know, and they want it fixed. And Article 1, Section 1 of Oregon's Constitution says, me and you on Oregon, if we're not U.S. citizens, we're Oregonians or persons, first person singular of people, men and women. We are not a fiction, unless we want to be. We are the flesh, blood, soul, body, mind, spirit. We're running this show, Article 1, Section 1. So we told them all that, and they all acquiesced to that. What better can you get? In their law form, if I tell you something and I claim it to be true in testimony in the form of an affidavit, after 30 days in your law form, have I done what I said properly, then you acquiesce legally in your law form and also in our law form, in the de jure law form. So, in the de facto law form and in the de jure law form, the fiction against the people win because the fiction cannot stand up against the people. They have to have either a CEO or a Bailey or an administrative authority or legal counsel, or they have to find some man or woman to stand up for their fiction against a man or a woman. And then that's where Article 3 comes in. A man or woman against the state. So the state of Oregon, with the upper and lowercase state of Oregon, aka the state of Oregon, the all caps version of Oregon, is standing before Article 1, Section 1 of Oregon's Constitution, which is people, flesh and blood. And we call together as many as we need. We have a sufficient pool that when Tanya says, I need a grand jury, and she calls the roll when she needed a grand jury and one is there, you have one. That's all it takes. It's not difficult. So we have a grand jury, and the grand jury does its work, and it's done excellent work on Oregon. But the grand jury can only go so far. It's only one of the three ways that you and I can be brought before the court. You got to have firsthand knowledge and be the person arresting. That doesn't have to be a cop or a sheriff, it can be anybody arresting somebody else that has done grievous damage, harm, killed, murdered, whatever it is, and they get them and they bring them to incarceration. Firsthand knowledge. The second one is a wet ink signature. You got to go find a lawful judge. There is none on Oregon. None. Zero. There's not one judge on Oregon. They're all color of law, play pretend. So there is no way on Oregon that there can be a warrant for arrest. So the next way is a grand jury. Now, there should be at least 36 additional grand juries on Oregon. Each district attorney on each county should have a grand jury ready to go. The problem is the court administrators will not let me and you, average man and woman, with the petition for redress of grievance, go through the court administrator and say, Fred, we know this to be true. These people that are acting like persons are doing this to us, and we would like to bring this before the grand jury. The court administrator, by their own laws, their own rules, statutes, etc., should say, why, absolutely, and do it. But no, they don't. They say the only way we'll call a grand jury is if the district attorney says so. And the district attorney refuses. We know. We've tried. So then you say, well, hell, how do you get a grand jury? Not difficult. There's all kinds of places that it's written down. Guy named Robert, when years ago we needed this How did we do this? And Robert sent the document, read it over, sounded good to me, sounded good to everybody else, so we implemented it. And we wrote up a document that you sign and two others assign. We call it testimony in the form of an affidavit of truth, and we testify that we are not U.S. citizens. Whatever the hell else we might be, by anybody's definition, we are men and women with our kids on the land and soil of Oregon. Can't get better than that. Without ruler and without subject. That's it. Good as you can get in the whole wide world and the universe. So we have a grand jury, and the grand jury says a man and a woman have been done damage by the state. The state is either the United States, the only lawful one there is, and we know it doesn't exist. We know it's not being used properly. It's wherever it is. What we have is a color of law incorporated governance, not the United States. And the way we know it is we have a document that we got from the GSA regarding the Mark O. Hatfield building. And in it, it says the city of Portland is a subdivision of the county of Multnomah, is a subdivision of the state of Oregon, is a subdivision of the United States. And that was signed by two attorneys for the United States Department of Justice on Oregon and filed into the United States Federal District Court on Portland. And then the case was sealed by the court. The records are not available for anybody to read. So when we were looking for all that we could get with the records being sealed, can't get anything out of anybody. But the GSA contacted the GSA. Do you manage this building? Oh, yeah. Okay, tell us about it. So they told us. They manage the building for the United States of America. I've seen the paperwork called a trio from the Fidelity Title Company, I believe it was. And so we know when you look at that document that says title and it says United States of America, you know it's bogus. It's phony. We already know there is only the United States of America. That's me and you in Congress assembled, giving us a representative form of government, which is supposed to come out of Washington, D.C., which is a 10-mile square. But when you look at it, the only portion that's still in Washington, D.C. on the map where they show you the square is the part in Maryland side of the river. The part in the Virginia side of the river is no longer considered part of Washington, D.C. It says so right on the map. That's Arlington. Now, how in the hell did they do that? They broke that law too. They break them all. Who was it? Alan Dulles, the director of the Central Intelligence Agency in the time of Eisenhower, and he was probably one of those involved in the murder of John F. Kennedy. Alan Dulles. His brother was John Foster Dulles, who was Secretary of State at the same time. Dulles said in words to this effect, "My job will be done when everything they know is a lie." And he was talking about me and you, the citizens of the United States, the ones that are supposed to keep their head down, keep their mouth shut, drive on the right-hand side, obey all the rules, and they will give you all the privileges. It will be absolutely great, the best form of government and the best economy in the world. And it's true. I've been over a big chunk of the world, and there's no place better than right here. And this is fucking terrible to a man or a woman with unalienable rights that absolutely understands the de jure form of government that we are required to have. I was totally into cognitive dissonance, just like so many others are. I got a whole flock of them in my family, in my blood family. A whole bunch of them got vaccinated. A whole bunch of them broke tradition and voted for Trump because they couldn't vote for Hillary. Uh, I don't know where they are now. One of them is an attorney. My granddaughter, the attorney. She says, Gramps, they never taught any of that in law school. Okay. And then she says, Gramps, I'm not going to talk to you about anything except your great granddaughters. Any other conversation I'm not going to have with you. That was in an email. We haven't talked in years. I get pictures, beautiful kids, nice family, good people, US citizens, totally locked into the corporation. So anyhow, we are those that is bringing Oregon to a constitutional Republican form of government 2022. Every time we push, they fold. They cannot stand against us. Yesterday, 6 of us took all day to do what Brandon did in a half an hour in Eugene, and that was to serve the papers of the abolishment of the of the state of Oregon, aka all capital state of Oregon's judiciary. Article 7 amended and original. There is no judiciary on Oregon with the proper oath. Period. None of them. Charlie gave Martha, I think it is, the chief of the Supreme Court of Oregon. That might be an improper title. And it might not be Martha, but I think so. Charlie took her on and she folded. Charlie has all of the paperwork. They acquiesced. The state of Oregon's Supreme Court cannot stand against a woman on the land of Oregon. They acquiesced. Thank you, Charlie. Job well done. So then in Eugene, the presiding judge failed in his job miserably. And we were there, our court. I don't know, I think there was 8 of us. Only takes 3. Our court was there. Dave spoke well. We did our job. Brandon had already served the presiding judge, the DA, and the sheriff with our documents that one, we were abolishing the Oregon judiciary, and we were doing it under our authority of Article 1, Section 1, and yada yada in a nice, well written, in clear English, Western American dialect, what we were doing, why we were doing it, who we were, and who was being notified, and they were. Brandon knocked it out by himself. Yesterday, 12 of us, pardon me, 12. Yesterday, 6 of us riding around all over town, Washington County, Multnomah County, and Clackamas County, presiding judge, DA, and sheriff were all served that document that we had already mailed out to all of them about the abolishment. We hand carried one to them. And we got proof of service delivered by hand. Ray and I used to do that. A funny aside, I love this. Ray and I one day went to 5 courts in 4 cities: Salem, Hillsboro, Portland. Where else was it? Beaverton. And we delivered all of our paperwork. And during that delivery, I received 14 violations to my unalienable rights. And I went home that night and I wrote up all 14 of them. And Ray and I delivered them the next day. We did the same route over again to all the cities and all the courts and delivered 14 documents to all the cities. They don't get to fool with unalienable rights if you're fighting back. The fighting back is really hard. We have so many that are willing to do it. It's just incredible to have such a well-run, well-operated crew. Thank you, Charlie. Yeah, if anybody likes this, I'll do it again or tell you more. We meet every Monday, either on Skype or on Zoom at 7 o'clock. www.orsja.org. Thank you. I yield.
They do not want to let go of this. They do not intend on losing here. And we do not intend giving it back to them.
And then the bullets started flying. And then he jumps out of the car. And he's got both his hands up. And he got out of the car, and he had his hands in the air. He's like, just shoot me then. This is what you want, just shoot me. And they did. They shot him dead. With his hands in the air, and I saw it. I swear to God. He was just walking with his hands in the air. And they shot him. And they shot him dead, and then after he was down on the ground, they shot him 3 more times.